let's go ahead and figure out how we do this. So we can go in, you can see there's this little exclamation point next to rules. That's because it's warning us that like, it's trying to be very clear that this isn't good. This was fine for development, but ultimately not a thing. All right, so we know that we kind of already know a little bit of the shape of our data. We know that there are posts. So we could say match. We'll say slash posts. Maybe a post ID there's too. And we'll allow anyone to read. Go ahead, query the whole list. That's fine with us. Get a specific one. And we'll allow a write only event that the request.auth.uid is not null. If they're not logged in, the user is null. If they are logged in, we'll have that user object that has the UID, the display name, so on and so forth. Cool. And then you can either hit publish or you can hit Command S. And they take a minute to propagate, but generally speaking, it's pretty quick. So if I go ahead and log in, new post, I am secure. There it is. I sign out. Another new post. Not going to happen. We're going to see the error in our console because we don't really have error handling. But you can see it's very angry at us. And the error message is missing or insufficient permissions, which makes sense because we put in security rules, and the rules say that you can't make things if you're logged out. So mission accomplished, right? Now, obviously, we'd love to catch that error and actually display a more helpful UI, but that kind of like is the major like gestalt of it. The other thing I want to do is right now, whether I made the post or somebody else made the post, I can delete any post I want, right? We want to make it so that a user can only delete their own. Now, this is going to be a little trickier because write was, remember, all three. It's create, it's update, and it's delete. So we're going to need to split this one out a little bit. Just using write as kind of the sledgehammer here is not going to be good enough. We'll go ahead and we'll say, OK, they can create if the request auth UID does not equal null. But if they want to, let's say, update, update, we have the star, right? So let them create or update, right? If they're logged in. However, they can only delete if the request auth.uid. Now remember we made that, this is going to blow up in our face a little bit because we never actually like used the current user. We're still using some default like 111 user ID. So I won't be able to delete any of them once we implement that because that's how we develop the database. But we'll say like, OK, the request auth UID, look at that resource, whatever document we're trying to get. And we had that user map that had a UID field on it. So if it was just something like the title, like we could put that there. But we have a map, so it's request.data.user.uid. So if these two things don't match, and this is not actual JavaScript, so it's 2 equal signs instead of 3. Watch how many times I make that mistake today. If these two things don't match, then the user will not be able to delete one. Right? So ideally, we start out with very locked down permissions, and we slowly begin to open them up depending on what the user needs. Yeah?
Under the current rules, would I be able to edit someone else's?
Yep, you would. Right, and so we could then start to like have further conditionals in there and build it out a little bit as well. Yeah, you would be, if we had the UI for doing that, you would totally be able to edit the content of somebody else's post. Right, so we might do something like,
create an update cannot be bunched together there? It won't work?
Create an update, our bunch together, we could separate them out, right? And we could start to write a conditional in here that got a little bit more granular, right? So like create update if the request is not null and like the title and content match the previous version, right? So you have that, you have the request.resource.data and the resource.data. You can make sure that like, okay, they're only, or all, you know, like they can't do this one, this one, this one. That's only the you know, this one that they can change. So you can get increasingly granular too.
Would it be sensible to just make update follow the same rule as delete, which is you can only do it to your own, and so just move update down into?
You could, that would break the ability to star them in our current data model, right? And so there's two choices there. Either, right, you could have a separate collection which is like user favorites, right, that have a user and a favorite. And so you can like give for a given user and those, or a given post and those favorites, right? And so you can then query that. And so you can get a little more granular, sometimes not necessarily in the security rules, but in the way that you structure your data, right? And so when you get to those like specific use cases, it does come down to, do I write more sophisticated security rules, or do I sit there and like rethink how I structure some of my data, right? Because sometimes querying a NoSQL database can be a little tricky because you basically can start at a given cursor and go in a particular order. So stuff like ORs don't really work. So sometimes you have to create these kind of like collections that are like two keys so that you can sort them in a particular way and run through a set of them as well. We're going to keep it a little bit naive for now because nothing will make your brain melt like getting really complicated with some of the security rules. So we have these in place. We'll let them update right now if they are logged in. We'll let them only delete if it's their own. We do need to change a few things real quick. Let's go ahead. We publish those. I go into my database. I'm just going to delete these documents because they all have this like garbage user in here. So we'll delete all of them. From the admin dashboard, you can do whatever you want. Security rules don't apply to you, right? And that is also true on any of the server, let's call them the server-side code things, right? The console is not necessarily server-side, but it is privilege access. Your Lambda functions can also have privilege access. Your Cloud functions can also have privilege access and do those things as well. Or if you pull down your secret key and run like a node process, you can also like go ahead and like you don't necessarily need these permissions. Your users do, right? There's always an escape hatch where you have superpowers and can do whatever you want.